When I went on stage in front of thousands of people and I spoke on stage, if at that very moment I decided to fall apart completely, does it matter how many times I was fantastic in communication or extremely charismatic or had great leadership skill? When it didn't really matter that much, but when it mattered the most, I fall apart? Of course not. It's in those high stress moments that you want to excel, because only in those moments will you be recognized, and not just by other people, but by yourself, and gain respect for yourself, which, as you already know, contributes to your confidence. If you haven't checked out that video of confidence and how to gain more confidence, then I will link it below. But before you go there, I want to make sure that you understand what to do in order to keep yourself going in the communication process, in being charismatic, and being a leader that you are in stressful times. I broke it down into 3 different steps. Step number 1, or I would say exercise number 1, is to jot down what your personal tendency is when you're under stress and you're around people. I tend to be the person who wants to retrieve. So I'm in an argument with somebody, we're going back and forth, there's a breaking point in which that happens, and I say to myself, I'm done, and I'm gonna walk away. And then thereafter, if I happen to stay, my patience comes from a highly patient person and reasonable and understanding person to I have absolute no patience for you. To the point where if I have to repeat a single word that I just said, I will freaking lose it. And if anything I say doesn't get across, if you take too long to respond to me, I will lose it. Because again, in that moment when I'm in high stress, I have no patience and I want to go. I'm just the type of person who just, I want to So especially if I'm arguing against somebody like my mother, my lovely, beautiful mother that said happy birthday to me just a few days ago, I would lose my mind, because she's the type of person who likes to take her time before she speaks, especially when she's under stress. So imagine the two of us going at it with each other, and I have 0 patience, and she has all the patience in the world when we're both under stress, and that's our personal traits. So jot down those personal traits. What do you tend to do? I tend to walk away. I tend to have low patience. I tend to feel like I'm in defense. I tend to have anger associated with the moment. For some people, it's hurt. Some people, it's sadness. And some people, you retrieve. I'm the type of person who wants to get in your face. And I'm the type of person who would yell at you in your face. Like, so all of those things, don't judge yourself. Jot it down. Jot it down, whatever it may be. So now that that's done, exercise number 2 would be to know the feeling you feel when you are triggered. So what does that mean? Right before the stage in which you become that negative trait aspect that you just jotted down in exercise number 1, there's a feeling that you feel. So for me, again, like I mentioned, it's anger. I feel this, it's almost like my body is on fire and I could feel my skin tingle a little bit, and I just have fire in me and I feel a little bit hot. What will help if you can't think of one immediately is to just sit down and think of a moment in which something just got you going and something brought out the worst in you. What was that feeling physically that you felt right before that stage? And really concentrating on closing your eyes. Physically, where was it? Did you feel it in your chest? Did you feel it in your arms? Did you feel it in your face? Did you feel it in the tip of your fingers? For everybody, it's different, but everybody has some sort of physical sensation that happens when you get triggered. The reason why I want to focus on what physically happens is that's something you can identify right away when you're in that moment, even if you don't understand or know what exactly is triggering you, because it could be something new, it could be something different, it could be something that just happened last week, or it could be something that happened deep in your childhood and it's suppressed. So whatever it may be, it's usually going to have some sort of physical sensation that happens regardless of whatever that trigger is. Third exercise, and the final exercise, is having a game plan. The game plan is going to be based off of number 1 and number 2. Instead of, let's say for me, being extremely impatient and extremely wanting to get in the person's face, wanting to perhaps say something hurtful, what will I do instead? What's my game plan? All right, so I'm going to jot down exactly what my game plan is to combat that. For me, oftentimes, if I have a paper and pen nearby, which I usually do, I will jot down exactly what my thoughts are, what my feelings are, or what the other person is saying. And it just helps me focus in and concentrate on something that I'm physically doing to combat my impatience. Because my impatience, I need something to be happening at all times. So if somebody like me and my mom starts to argue and she likes to just stay still, it will drive me crazy. But if I'm physically doing something, even though my mouth is not running, and I just write down all of my thoughts and feelings while we're in an argument, it tremendously helps me. If I don't have a paper and pen, I tend to imagine that I'm writing down right in front of me, and I'm imagining me writing something. It personally helps me combat my impatience when I'm in a high stress situation. Also, a side note, it also combats my anger, because then I can focus in and zero in on things that I probably shouldn't say, or thoughts that aren't true, but it feels true in the moment. And I can write that down and I can scratch it out as I go. So that's something that I've trained myself to do in order to combat that. Now, your game plan has to also address exercise number 2. Oftentimes, and this just happened recently, where I was physically feeling the sensation of being triggered. And so my game plan right away is to reframe what is happening. So before I need to catch myself in the state of my hyper stress moment, I want to be able to catch myself before I get to the point where I have to get a paper and pen out. The ideal is that I don't have to go there. And I like to call this my robot state, because in this process, and this might take time for you to do, but in this process, what works for me is that I pretend that I am no longer Tina, right? And that I am a simple robot, and I'm only taking in facts and information. I do text analysis, which is something that a lot of actors may know how to do, is that I just look at the pure text of what's happening. Whether it is, look, Jack went to the store and Jack bought 2 items. Jack didn't buy the item I asked for. And so those are the text analysis. So without attaching meaning to those texts, and therefore Jack doesn't care about me, right? So that would be attaching emotional meaning to the text analysis of just jotting down what is physically happening, but not what's emotionally happening or what's mentally or psychologically happening, but only looking at what is physically happening. And that makes me take away from my emotional state. So I can step back and really look at myself and analyze, what is this? Is this something that is my baggage? The answer is yes, at least a part of it is. And taking responsibility, extreme ownership on my half of it. It doesn't mean the other person isn't wrong. It doesn't mean the situation isn't a wrong situation or is unjust. But it does mean that before you can hope for or ask for anything fair in return, we have to be fair on our end and take responsibility on our end. I can go into more details about it, but the basic concept is that you look at the facts, you ingest and digest what the simple facts are, not the emotions, not the thought process, not what it means, but the simple facts of the matter, and take extreme ownership on your end of things before you try to point fingers or blame anybody else. And in that, you can combat what your ego might come, or the hurt or the anger, or whatever it is that your tendency might be from exercise number one. You can combat that before you even get there. And the hope is that you don't even go there in the first place, because exercise number two and recognizing that and having a game plan from it already neutralizes it. Of course, it doesn't always work, and then you can go into the first one, but ideally, if you can stop it right then and there, then we got it good, we got it going. Comment below, let me know from the difficulty level of 1 to 10, 1 being the least difficult, 10 being this is a crazy difficult exercise, how difficult you thought these three-step exercise was. Don't just do it within 1 minute. I would suggest that you take your time to go through this and really think about what triggers you, how does it feel sensationally, physically, and what your negative traits are that you wish that you can combat during those high stress moments, and what your game plan is for each. Please like the video if you like today's content, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you on the next video.